Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft the full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Extra Serving, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief of NRN. Today, we're going to be talking about Red Robin's new activist investor. We're going to talk about Chipotle's investment in a supply chain company as well as a startup fast casual. And we're going to talk about KFC's new tenders. And I'm going to be talking about all of that with my good friend and colleague, Alicia Kelso. Alicia, welcome to Extra Serving.
Thank you for having me, Sam. Did you know today's my 2-year anniversary at NRN?
I knew that. Of course I knew that because LinkedIn told me that. And
it's like Facebook. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. I remembered it. Of course I did. Alicia, happy 2 years with NRN. What are your reflections on the past 2 years?
My reflections are how funny it was that you and I have known each other for about 15 years. And then we did, because I worked for QSR Web and we would get the same emails. And I think I went up to you at a National Restaurant Association show. I was like, "Are you Sam?"
You did. I remember it vividly. We were in that downstairs level outside the press room.
Much younger.
We were much younger, much stronger livers at that point in time.
And then then when I was at Forbes, we did a webinar together, and I think a story together. We worked together when you were
And I think you were one of the first people to know that I had gotten the gig with NRN because I was between gigs at the time. I was in my week of no email and no title, and I told them what my title would be. So that was a very exciting time.
Yeah, I think the point is, I think serendipitously, we are meant to work together. And
yep, it was fate
because we're a good hang.
Because we're a good hang and we have a fun podcast together. We have fun together. If you ever run across me and Alicia at an event, come say hello. We're not intimidating. We are not inaccessible. We want to talk to you. So may that be your invitation that at the next event you can come say hello. Although I don't know the next thing we'll be at together. I will be at RFDC in Vegas next month. And then honestly, after that, conferences wind down. We are really at the end of conference season. If you're listening to this, you've probably been to 4 or 5 of them like everybody else. But then we'll get back into it in January with ICR. I think will be our first thing.
Yeah,
we'll back at
ICR, then WFF, and then
that's right,
RLC, and then
the whole shebang. We talked about Create last week. We're still buzzing off of that. I should just say, while we're talking about conferences, of course, October 15th through 17th, Nashville, Tennessee, next year. Make sure you put that into your calendar now. You do not want to miss it. It will be free once again to restaurant operators. And we will have a very exciting lineup of events or speakers, I'm sure. So don't miss that one. But yes, we have a lot more events to get to in 2025 before we do that. Speaking of lots to get to, we got a lot to talk about today. So we're going to dive right into it. Alicia, let's talk about Chipotle because we haven't talked about Chipotle enough. We should talk about Chipotle every week because they make news every week. It feels like they announced an investment via their Cultivate Next fund, $100 million Cultivate Next fund, which I think they announced a couple of years ago, that fund. 2022. And they've made a couple of investments via the Cultivate Next fund already. They announced their latest round of investments, an artificial intelligence supply chain company called, I want to get this right. Is it LumaChain? Did I get that right?
LumaChain, yep.
LumaChain.
That's Australian-based.
An Australia-based artificial and supply chain company. And very exciting for me and for you, they invested in the fast casual Brassica, which is based here in Columbus. So I am a big fan. And I'll share a little bit more about those guys. But it is a Mediterranean fast casual concept, I believe with 6 locations currently. They also got an investment to scale. Let's start with the supply chain company, Alicia. Why does this make sense for Chipotle?
Well, it makes sense for Chipotle because, they think that they are sharing that it tracks the origin, location, and condition of each individual item in their supply chain. The point is to reduce waste, increase efficiency, everybody's striving to do that. Not everybody has the deep pockets that Chipotle has. Right. I do want to note this Cultivate Next Fund, like we mentioned, was started in 2022. Chipotle has had such traction with this program and investing in these startup companies that it's since doubled its investments. So this portfolio of startups that it is identifying has grown kind of in earnest here. The supply chain thing, I think, is really fascinating because it does leverage computer vision AI to sort of monitor the inside of these food production plants to improve quality, efficiency, safety. This is according to the company. I don't want to get into the 2015, 16, 17 supply chain crisis of Chipotle. They have far moved past that. Yep. And put in significant barriers. But if anybody knows the risks of supply chain safety and control, it is this company. And so I think there's a lot of potential here, again, both from leveraging that AI piece of it for the efficiency, which everybody is striving to do now because we have to, and for the quality control, to sort of forge a new way of thinking on the supply chain, because heaven knows that we don't want to take any of those risks. The potential here, I think, is pretty interesting to again leverage that technology for the supply chain piece.
Totally. And it's an unfair advantage, of course, for Chipotle. I mean, we've seen McDonald's do this. We've seen Yum Brands do this. Of course, these massive companies that have this war chest to be able to spend on these investments. It makes a lot of sense, because to be able to have that access to a tool such as, a supply chain technology that's never going to not be important. Right. It's always going to be an important tool to have. Sometimes there are some investments, I think McDonald's, dynamic yield, I believe they ended up spinning off. Is that right? So yes. Some of them, they don't always they're not a perfect fit forever. But still, for these major restaurant companies to invest in, especially tech platforms that can create efficiencies and accuracies in what they're doing, it makes a lot of sense. All of you listening probably do not have a similar war chest unless you're working with one of those companies. But
let's not be dismissive, though. Of course, Chipotle has no debt. They've got big pockets, so on and so forth. McDonald's is that is what it is. The point is, when companies like McDonald's and Chipotle invest in these companies, eventually, ideally, it will make it more accessible down the line for smaller concepts, because then it rolls out if it does go through its stage gate process. If Chipotle finds a reason to find, a lot of value in something like this, then, scales it within their system. On paper, again, ideally, this would, sort of snowball into a bigger effect, in which case it does become more common in the industry and more affordable. We need the companies like Chipotle and McDonald's to be spending money on this for case study purposes for the rest of the industry a few years down the road. So, good on them for exploring these kinds of things, using their deep pockets and no debt for exploring these things that I think have potential industry-wide, again, a few years down the road.
For sure. All right, let's talk about Brassica, the investment in Brassica. So, of course, I'm familiar. They're based here in Columbus, and I'm sure you were familiar as well for that reason. So a little bit of background. Brassica is a fast casual Mediterranean concept, a little bit different than Cava in that one of their big emphases is on sandwiches. So pita sandwiches alongside bowls. So it does have the bowl similar to a Cava. You can get salads or grains, but then they also have these pita sandwiches, kind of a build-your-own Mediterranean type menu. But what is really distinct about this company is it was not the first brand started by the Malheims. Darren and Kevin, and Kevin's wife Katie are the three partners in this company. They actually have another restaurant chain called North Star Cafe. And North Star is a phenomenal concept. It's been around for several years. And North Star is, I guess it's safe to call it like a fast casual kind of hybrid. You order at the counter, they bring the food out to you. Very upscale level food, though. Higher average ticket for sure, but oh my goodness, is the food incredible. With North Star, we're big fans of, my family. It's just a very, very Great spot for a brunch, a breakfast, a lunch. And I'm not sure how many North Stars there are, but there are more than there are Brassica. I want to say maybe around 10. I know they've expanded into Cincinnati, Cleveland as well. But Brassica then came later. Brassica is this fast casual Mediterranean concept. And one point I want to make too about these concepts is that the Malheims came out of Hillstone. So these are Hillstone people. And if you know what that means that they are maniacal about hospitality. They, Hillstone Restaurant Group, of course, famous for its incredible hospitality across its several upscale fine dining concepts. That's where they came out of. And so the hospitality at these companies is at North Star, at Brassica is really incredible, top notch. And they're even the type, and I know Kevin pretty well. We get lunch every so often, and I've never talked to him for a story because he says, look, all due respect, that's not, they just want to put their head down and operate great restaurants, and they do a very good job at that. I think that might be changing. I think he's probably going to need to start talking to media a little bit, and we will have that story for you soon. But let's take a step back and say, Alicia, why does it make sense for Chipotle to invest in a fast casual, particularly when they do have a spotty history in this regard? So tell me about that.
Spotty, inconsistent, whatever. Yeah. It obviously, I think it is a play here. We are looking at the meteoric rise of Cava.
Yep.
And, Cava has had quite a growth trajectory, especially since its IPO. I mean, normally a lot of these companies sort of come back to earth. Cava has been consistently growing and hasn't really, I guess, leveled off that much since that IPO, regardless of, this 24 challenging environment. And obviously there's a lot of white space. There's a lot of things at play. It's certainly not just an IPO halo. I think there is a significant amount of interest in the Mediterranean diet.
Yep.
In general, the white space here, our population is diversifying. People are more familiar with it. There is this insane healthy halo about it, and it's just something that's new. That people, are interested in newness now. Whereas 4 years ago, in the throes of the pandemic, when we were all scared and hunkered down at home, we gravitated toward the familiar, KFC buckets, pizza. And now we're exploratory again. And this is a sexy category with a lot of runway. And I think that Chipotle obviously is wise to sort of try and play here. There's a lot of space though, like you mentioned it, there's only 6 restaurants. This investment is going toward opening new locations and expanding into new markets. It is very new. We're very ground floor here. But as you mentioned, obviously Brassica is not the first concept that Chipotle has invested in. Where the Pizzeria Locale, I think, just shuttered last year. Mm-hmm. And then Farmiga Fresh was abandoned earlier this year. And then we also, Chipotle shut down Shop House Southeast Asian Kitchen. There were 15 Shop House locations, and they shut that down in 2017. I think that was more of an implication from the food safety crisis that they had to hone their focus in on the mothership.
Yeah.
But of course, the thesis here undoubtedly is that Chipotle is making a play at that Cava crowd, and why not? It's an attractive model with a lot of momentum and a lot of consumer appeal.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and going back to that history that they've had, Shop House, Pizzeria Locale. The other one too that is maybe they prefer to sweep under the rug and not talk about was Tasty Burger, which they opened about an hour south of Columbus. By the way, if you don't know, Chipotle has a second headquarters in Columbus, and so my assumption is that they just had a front row seat to Brassica, and that may be one of the reasons why. The Columbus part of this, but in Lancaster, Ohio, about an hour south of here, they opened a burger concept. 8-9 years ago, and a complete failure. One important note about these string of failures that they've had in the past, different regime. That was all pre Brian Nickel. That was all back when it was like Chipotle, Golden Child, let's try to put our golden touch on all these other things. And they are much older, wiser now, and different leadership, of course. And the Cultivate Next fund is a different animal. This is it's not that direct investment they had made. This is through this fund. I think they're making smarter investments. And yes, to your point, to bet on Mediterranean fast casual, a competitor to Cava, with incredibly savvy operators. They're not just checking the trend box here. They're partnering with somebody that's very savvy, knows what they're doing, incredible hospitality, great menu, very of the moment branding and design of their restaurants. I think this could be a really smart play for Chipotle in the long run to have that foot in Mediterranean fast casual. And great to have another competitor to Cava. I've said all along, I don't know, will Cava come into Columbus, because you have Brassica. There's another concept here called Agape. We've got fast casual Mediterranean here, but Cava's just steamrolling all over the place. There's room for more, right? There's room for multiple concepts in the space because of the interest in it, to your point.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to something more in your neck of the woods, Louisville-based KFC.
From Columbus to Louisville.
I hope our audience is not sick of Columbus and Louisville, because, guys, this is what we talk about. This is where we live, so we're going to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And they happen to be, while they are secondary markets, they happen to be incredibly influential to the restaurant industry.
No doubt.
So here we are. KFC has a new tender meal out, but of course we know in chicken tenders, you have Raising Cane's, you have Dave's Hot Chicken, you've got all these upstarts coming into the tender space. KFC, traditionally a bone-in chicken concept, and it really made their name, of course, in that. Can tenders help to reassert KFC's position in the chicken marketplace?
I speaking as a Louisvillian, I hope so. And I think we need to back up real quick here. So they launched their original recipe tenders this week. That the tenders have been in test for a year. In fact, the test market was in between us and Cincinnati. As you mentioned, tenders are a big deal right now. Raising Cane's. You follow the requests from McDonald's fans on social media about bringing back the snack wrap. This is clearly what consumers want. They're portable, they're easy. So I think this product launch puts KFC squarely into a conversation about something that is highly in demand. But this isn't the first time KFC has done that in the past couple of years. I mean, the company has been trying, to inject itself into high demand products for probably the past 2 or 3 years now, with the sandwich iterations, with saucy nuggets, bowls, trying to appeal to a younger audience, because bone-in is largely appealing to older audiences. And they're trying to get away from just being known as a bone-in place, right? We talked about this. Bone-in was hugely popular decades ago, and then again in COVID. So KFC, had a huge tailwind during COVID. I think something like 80% of their orders shifted to buckets during COVID. If I recall a conversation with their former president, Kevin Hochman, who's now at Brinker. But we're not, like I mentioned, we're not at home now. In fact, we're probably more portable than ever, more exploratory than ever. Traffic is down, so we want something that excites us more now than ever. And KFC has got to be involved in these categories to compete. I do believe the 11 herbs and spices piece of this tenders will differentiate the brand from the Raising Cane's and everybody else who has come up with a tender. But again, I think it's important to focus on that need to compete. So KFC has very clearly been struggling the past few quarters. I think -5 last quarter, -7 Q1. If I'm looking at this, despite these efforts to become more modernized, they've gone through a bevy of changes at the C-suite. They just hired another new CMO. I think that's their third CMO in 3.5, maybe 4 years. And you kind of see almost a desperation when you look at the creative backing this tenders launch. They're taking shots at Popeyes. They're taking shots at Chick-fil-A. They've even launched a comeback sauce. Right. So it's kind of indicative of where the brand, finds itself right now. And in fact, I pulled some numbers for you, Sam, because I know you love it when
you going. You're offering that extra serving, Alicia.
I'm
See
trying.
What I did
there? Diving into Technomics numbers from 2019. 2019 is when Popeyes launched their sandwich, right? I think KFC's came along in late 21, if I'm right. So since 2019, Popeyes sales have grown by 1.7 million and KFC's have grown by about 600,000. Unit count, KFC has grown their footprint by 575 since 2019. KFC has shrunk by 274. So there's a reason this creative is going after its competitors. Will tenders be the answer here? I don't know. I thought sandwiches and nuggets and bowls might be, but the brand just seems to continue to lose some traction. And like I mentioned, I'm in Louisville. I want this. I love KFC, So I think one final point, Sam, if I can.
Sure.
KFC, obviously, they dominate internationally. I think they're growing like 10,000 locations within the next couple of years in an already robust, international footprint. It's a huge cash cow for parent company Yum Brands, that KFC global market. We're starting to see, we just covered this week that Chick-fil-A is investing more to mark their entry into Asia. Yep. They're growing in the UK. So they're starting to pick up the pace internationally. Popeyes is starting to do the same. And I think a couple of years from now, this international piece is going to be just as interesting of a conversation as the domestic piece is now with, whatever's going on with KFC.
That's a great point. Yeah. I mean, I think, KFC, I think ultimately has a branding issue, which is that it feels tired. It feels, less of a modern of the moment kind of brand than a Raising Cane's, right? Or even a Chick-fil-A. This is kind of mean, but if you want a party trick, run some numbers by your friends about how many more KFCs there are than Chick-fil-A and how much less money they make. Because the answer is like, there's essentially twice as many KFCs than Chick-fil-A's and they make about a quarter of the money as Chick-fil-A. Now, Chick-fil-A lives on a planet of its own. It's not very fair.
So you can say that about many brands.
Yeah, you can do that with any brand in Chick-fil-A, and you're going to have some fun stories.
A reminder, they're closed on Sundays,
and they're closed on Sundays, in case you forgot. So that, the sheer, volume with which these other chicken players are performing is really what should scare KFC, because it's lost its hold on that chicken consumer. Now, that bucket chicken, right? Like, that is, or I should say bucket chicken bucket, whatever you want to call it. The chicken bucket was so iconic for so long, but people, younger customers especially, gravitate toward that boneless. They gravitate toward that tender and that sandwich. And there you see KFC trying to say, okay, we'll do that too. But could it be that KFC needs to reclaim what it did best? Does it need to reclaim? And I don't necessarily mean that needs to be bone-in chicken, although, like, if you really kind of dig in and try to innovate around bone-in chicken and say there's still a customer out there for bone-in chicken, but try to innovate around the brand, try to innovate around the access points, right? This is where Chick-fil-A isn't just a good boneless product. They're also really good at running restaurants. They have these incredible locations that we've talked about a ton, very tech forward, very fast, efficient restaurants to get that, that chicken meal. Raising Cane's, very good at drive-through, right? Again, now KFC obviously has drive-through, but the KFC, when I think of KFCs in my neighborhood, I think of these KFCs in kind of the wrong block and kind of tired location. So it's a multifaceted problem for what is a legacy company. And it's not, you can't snap your fingers and update a brand so easily. But I really, I think that point you made about international is so important, Alicia, because Chick-fil-A going internationally, of course, we've heard from other startup concepts like Slim Chickens, I believe, that are really, planning to go international. This demand for chicken in the States will take off like wildfire globally, already has started to, and there is so much opportunity globally. KFC, of course, has tapped into that opportunity already, but they lost market share in the States. They need to be careful not to lose that market share globally, because I think that could yet happen with all of these upstart companies.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we didn't touch on that I think at least deserves a superficial touch is, KFC right now is losing market share just based on the numbers to both Chick-fil-A and Popeyes. And you talked about Raising Cane's, coming up meteorically, Slim Chickens, etc. KFC also has to contend with another issue, if you will, and that is McDonald's jumping in earnest in chicken. Their chicken sales are on par with their beef sales now. They are really pushing the gas on chicken because that's where consumers want people or chains to push the gas. Same with their sister brand Taco Bell. I mean, the Cantina chicken menu launched, I think in March and is doing really, really well. So what happens when you're, historically the legacy chicken player and you're getting your lunch eaten by chicken, other chicken concepts and also burger concepts and also Mexican concepts. I mean, it just seems like they're getting, jabs from every which way right now. And you're right that they need to find some footing here. I think the sandwich is a good spot for them. This tenders launch, hopefully, I think will provide some momentum. But again, they've had nuggets and bowls and variations of their sandwich, and they seem to be, is slipping even further. So we'll see.
For sure. Okay, so next up on our list, we are going to talk about Red Robin and the activist investor that has taken a share in the company. And we're going to talk about what that means. And we're going to bring on our guest, our extra serving for the day. But you want to know something so funny about podcasting, Alicia?
I don't know a thing about podcasting. I just know you made me buy this big microphone.
The funny thing is you need a link to get in here so our extra serving just asked me for that link, said, where's the link? So I just sent it and they will be here shortly. And we're going to, there she is. Of course I shared the link with her. I knew what I was doing. Welcome, Leigh Anne Zinsmeister, managing editor for NRN. Isn't it so funny that I shared that link with you?
Really, really convenient that you did it at the time you told me to join and not a full minute later.
I know, right? The good news is it's the same link, so you found it. So we're all good here.
I knew where to go.
It was a test, Leigh Anne, to find out if you would be able to solve the challenge I put in front of you and find the link.
Or if the listeners would listen to me get fired live.
Yeah, that would have been fun. That could be fun. I'll save that for later. But I can't fire you when you're wearing a Guardian sweatshirt. Of course, by the time our audience is listening to this, we will have found out whether the Guardians have just completely collapsed after that magical game, or they built the momentum and were able to take on the mighty Yankees. But last night was a very special game.
If things keep going our way, there's a chance that as people listen to this on Monday, I am at Yankee Stadium. Fingers crossed. Okay.
Fingers crossed. I want that for you. I love that for you. As the kids say these days. Anyway, this measly little small group of Cleveland fans, we need to have our moments sometimes. We need to have our moment. And
just every once in a while.
Especially the way the Browns season is going.
Let's not talk about Browns. Okay, moving right along into Red Robin. Let's talk about the fact that Red Robin has two activist investors who collectively got bought into about 12% share of the company. And arguably Red Robin needs a little bit of a shakeup. Things have not been great for it. Stock is down 60%, I believe, this year. They put out a comeback plan in 2023 that is maybe not going so well. Leigh Anne, what should we think about the fact that this activist investor is getting involved with a brand like Red Robin?
It's interesting. This news was almost surprising to me because I would have expected it more like a year ago. I mean, it's been almost 2 full years since Red Robin put out their comeback plan. So they've been struggling for a while. But we have seen a lot of movement with activist investors this year. It feels to me like more than usual, although I know Alicia pays more attention to those kinds of stories. But lots of brands have been picking up activist investors this year with a lot of different outcomes. Portillo's has one, and I haven't really heard about it since they invested. Starbucks got one, and a week later, I don't know if you heard, made some changes.
I read about that.
I don't know what you're talking
about. So there are a lot of different potential outcomes here. I mean, I think, Alicia was just saying this morning how much she likes GJ Hart, which is Red Robin's CEO. He's a smart guy. The comeback plan, as I recall, was starting to work when the economy started to do its thing this year. So it's not really that the executive team doesn't know what they're doing or can't handle a brand like this. I think, the best case scenario here would be maybe the activist investors like push a little bit and get some changes through, but not. I don't think Red Robin is in need of an executive overhaul like Starbucks got. Although I might argue whether Starbucks really needed that either. It's also interesting, as you said, there are two activist investors who are new to Red Robin. One of them has invested in a number of restaurant brands over the year, including Fiesta Restaurant Group, which was sold and taken private after the fact. They've also been involved with Jamba and Potbelly. The other investor, Jumana Capital, doesn't really invest in restaurants. They're more in the data tech space. So I think that's an interesting move. Now they have less than 4% of the Red Robin shares. So the larger investor is JCP Investment Management. But yeah, I think it's an interesting case, especially with there being two different investment firms involved here. So I'm curious to watch and see. And I'm always rooting for Red Robin. I am a Red Robin fan. As a consumer, I'm saying that, but also as, someone in this industry, I want Red Robin to succeed.
Yeah, Red Robin. I mean, look, Red Robin occupies a bit of a unique space in that as a casual burger-focused concept. Yes, there's plenty of other American-style casual chains that it competes with, but really being focused on that burger space. It is I don't know if I want to call it a beloved institution, but I mean, it certainly has its loyal fans. It occupies a unique space. It has a lot of potential, although we all know the struggles of casual dining, of course. And perhaps that may be what the activist investors recognize. Now, activist investor, we said that a lot. That being, I don't want to make it to be a dirty word necessarily, but we all know what activist investors are capable of. You have sort of your worst case scenarios with what's happening at Cracker Barrel, for example, and then you have somebody who comes in, such as theirs. Don't need to throw around names, but you know who I'm talking about. Where it becomes this very ugly, years-long ordeal where it is a power struggle, genuinely. You have other investors who are coming in and they genuinely want to help be a part of a turnaround and think that they can apply that know-how. And when you have someone like a JCP who has other restaurant investments, perhaps they do have some of that know-how. But again, the power struggle is what you risk here, where it's the struggle between your other investors and certainly your board and your corporate team and the investor who wants to walk in and say, this is what's going to happen now. Alicia, you, I'm sure, have lots of opinions on this. Tell me what you think.
I'm not supposed to have opinions. I'm a journalist. I tell you that every Friday. Yeah. No, I had a conversation with GJ Hart 2 or 3 weeks right before Create, and I do adore him. I think he is brilliant, and I think his 5-point strategy is brilliant. I think it's exactly what this brand needed, and I think what's intriguing is the pieces that he has put into place as part of this plan last year are what the dated brands needed. Getting this loyalty program revamping the entire menu, and focusing on the labor piece. They were trimming labor in a time where we are craving hospitality. What intrigues me, GJ Hart is a Texas Roadhouse transplant, and he is incentivizing operators so they have a little bit more skin in the game. I think these are things that are going to take a little bit of time. This plan was announced early last year, as Leigh Anne mentioned, and as we've talked about at length here and elsewhere, we expected a challenging 2024. I don't think we expected this challenging of a 2024, and especially in the casual dining space. And so this plan, I think on paper is solid, but I think it's got a lot of stuff working against it. It's an uphill plan, given this backdrop that changed abruptly, especially in July. And these activist investors are pointing out the obvious, that Red Robin's valuation is significantly lower than its competition. And what is going to happen of this? I think we'll see. Hart is optimistic that consumers will start coming back toward the end of this year, notably after the election. I'm writing that story right now. But as Leigh Anne's earlier point, there has been some activist investor activity earlier this year. Starbucks activist investors led to a new CEO. BJ's activist investors led to a new CEO. Starboard came on board and Bloomin' in December 2023. In August of this year, they named Michael Spanos as their new CEO. I'm not an investor in this company, and so I can have a little bit more patience. I don't think these guys can. My final note with Hart is during that conversation, I think is notable. This plan is moving the needle on internal metrics. And I think, their customer satisfaction scores are higher than they were 10 years ago. Taste scores are up. Guest sentiment scores are up. Wait times are down. Guest relations complaints, he said, quote, have fallen off a cliff. And then, of course, you get the new refresh loyalty program in there, which is leading to more frequency, which is huge. Frequency is huge in the casual dining space. So this, I think, is a precursor to what happens to, sort of a foundational piece to a business getting stronger. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens here.
If I could draw one parallel to private equity, I recognize activist investor different than private equity, but if you have some parallels, it's that you have an outside institution that comes in with the money and says, we're going to buy our way into this company and we're going to make some changes around here. And I'm drawing this parallel because, of course, Alicia, coming out of the investment summit last week that we had alongside Create, it was sort of funny in an awkward kind of way, but how many people who are not part of private equity called private equity evil from the stage, and how many other people in the room were with private equity, of course, very pro private equity. And I'm going through something with my sister. My sister works for a utilities company where they were bought up by a private equity company. And that company proceeded to strip out all of the levels of management, strip out all of the things that, in my sister's opinion, really made that company special. She's been with them for almost 20 years. She is looking for the exit. And a lot of her coworkers are similarly looking for that exit. I draw this parallel to say that it's easy for a company to come in with the money and say, we know what to do. And unfortunately, sometimes those companies come in and what they know what to do is to cut costs and make more money and then split. Again, a little bit different between the private equity, which is private, versus the activist investors, which is public. But at the end of the day, a lot of these firms, their goal is get our opinion in, get a seat at the table. Find ways to save money, find ways to increase profit and split. But in the restaurant industry, that's really hard because the restaurant industry is a people industry. Yeah. And so when you lose the heart and soul of a brand, of a company, it's noticeable to customers and it's noticeable to employees. There are plenty of examples where the activist investor coming in leads to positive change. So I don't want to say that this is a bad thing all around. There are plenty of private equity institutions that do real good for the companies. And a lot of them were in the room at the investment summit, by the way. Yeah. Shout out to all the private equity who was there because I genuinely think they get this point, which is you can cut costs, you can increase profit, you can make changes, but you cannot mess with the heart and soul of a brand because that's where customers are connected to it, right? That's where the money really is. It's really kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? It's not as important as the relationship you have, I guess you should say. Yeah. So anyway,
I think that's why Hart's plan is so, compelling on paper. He's a restaurant guy. He's done this before. Yeah. And his 5-point plans was all about the fundamentals of running a great restaurant company: food, service, labor, hospitality, incentivizing the people with the skin in the game who are boots on the ground in the restaurant. It seems to be something that I again, ideally will work, that just got that huge wrench of 2024 thrown into it.
Right. For sure. All right. Well, I don't know. I feel like we need to end on a more positive note. What's a more positive
That was
note?
Positive. Yay.
That was positive. Okay. Something you're doing this weekend, food you're going to eat. Leigh Anne, you go first.
Tomorrow I am going to see Maggie Rogers in concert at Madison Square Garden. And if you're thinking to yourself, Leigh Anne, didn't you see Maggie Rogers last weekend at Bridgestone in Nashville? The answer is yes. I don't think our listeners knew that, but now they do. So I'm having brunch at supper. I'm bumming around the East Village all day. I'm having dinner at the Smith, and then I am going to the Maggie Rogers concert.
Alicia, are you like me and just envious of what it must be like to not have children and be able to do those things?
I've got 2 hockey games tomorrow and a soccer game on Sunday.
Yeah.
I'll be watching baseball. Well, I guess not tomorrow night, but there will also be baseball. Tonight I'm watching baseball.
There's also baseball.
On my
That
couch.
is right. Yeah. Well, I too have soccer tomorrow, but I'm going to go check out Brassica because Brassica, again, we talked about it earlier in the episode. It is here in Columbus. I will have a report for all of you on my experience next week on Extra Serving, but that's all we have for this week. Leigh Anne, Alicia, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Matt Burton, how you doing?
I am fantastic, Brett. Good to see you. It's been a while.
It has. And since we last spoke, I'm pretty sure you joined Dickies. You haven't been there that long, right? When did you join?
No, I guess on a calendar, no, but boy, it feels like I've been here forever. Just been here. Just my 1 year anniversary was this week, actually. So kind of a unique time for us to catch up. But yeah, I've been here for 1 year. Moved from Chicago, and I'm down here in Dallas.
How do you like it? Like Dallas and your job?
Oh, okay. Yeah, two separate conversations, Brett. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So. I love it at Dickies. I think you remember, I mean, I've always had this passion for barbecue, competing for many, many years on my own. And to take something that I was passionate about and now get paid for it, that's the dream, right? That's the dream. Now the Dallas weather, I mean, it was like 100 degrees 2 days ago and now it's 40. So I'm not quite sure I'm used to this. And so it'll take a little while. And I'm still a Bears fan. So,
But you moved from Chicago, which is not a good weather city. I love Chicago. But nobody moves there for the weather. No,
that's true. But when you're born and raised, you're kind of used to all four seasons. And when you kind of don't have that, it's a little bit of a change. But the longer I'm down here, I certainly don't miss snow blowing. I will tell you that. No question about it.
Yeah, that's not fun.
No, not at all.
I solved that problem by renting. So I don't have to blow snow.
That's also something new to me, renting. And that is nice. Any little thing you can make a quick phone call to take care of. But I'll tell you, the weather here for what I do, you barbecue anytime, any day of the time of the week, doesn't matter. So the weather's perfect for barbecue here.
Well, do you guys? How does it work when you're testing new items at Dickies? What kind of facilities do you have to test new stuff?
Well, I mean, Dickies has been around since 1941, right? And they certainly have their way of doing things, and they're kind of a pillar in the community when it comes to barbecue. Everybody knows it. So change doesn't happen super fast always. But we did decide this year to do some pretty major additions to our menu. And when we tested, we're a large franchisee organization, and we are in 5 countries, and we're in I think 47 states now or whatever, so we're all over. But we have I have 2 stores that are operated by the company, right literally I can walk to right from here, that I use as literally my R&D kitchen, so everything is done R&D in real life. And then we have 10 restaurants owned by corporate that we do all of the testing itself, and that includes 2 of them in the airport, which is really, really high volume. So that really, really keeps me on my toes to make sure things are moving fast.
Yeah, well, and airports are they a good place to test items? I would think they would, because you get such a great cross section of the planet.
Yeah, well, and they don't, they're never too shy to share their opinions, right? Because you may never see them again, so they'll tell you what you think, and they're on a plane. But yeah, the big thing there for our testing is more of operational. Our big deal is 2 minutes order to pay. We want to get people in and out, whether you're at the airport or you're in any one of our stores. So if I create a new menu item that's taking 10 minutes to get prepared because it takes that long, we're going to find out pretty darn fast where that bottleneck is in an operation like the airport, and we can immediately address it. Or in this case, when we ran this out, we got rid of a couple menu items because it just slowed it down, and it was important that our guests got served fast.
It's interesting what you say about customer feedback in the airport. That like, if you have regulars, they're not going to hurt your feelings, but especially in Texas. But in airports, and also in airports, people are usually a little bit on edge. So their jerkiness might actually come out, which is kind of what you want when you're testing something. Like, you want honest feedback.
You do want honest feedback, and we certainly get it. There's everywhere you go, you get a lot of honest people. But you are right, and that's one of those things I'm learning moving from Chicago to the South. In Chicago, people tell you how you feel. Down here, they really are. They're just very polite, and You may never hear that they didn't care for something, and maybe you might have lost them. But at the airports and these busier operations, we certainly hear about things, and it allows us to quickly adapt and make changes. Again, both operationally and if somebody doesn't like something, we can fix it or take it off the menu when we're testing.
Yeah, yeah. Once they're rolled out, it's rolled out. When you've made some pretty radical changes, I would say you're kind of expanding beyond traditional barbecue, right?
We did, Brett. We sure did. So what we've really called it was the southernization of the Dickey's menu. I mean, at the core, we're still pit smoked barbecue, right? All of our operations have a smoker. We have pit masters. They go through weeks of training. We're rubbing down the briskets. They're cooking 11 to 13 hours. That's still the core of what we do. But I mean, as you know, and we've talked about in the past, is the world that we live in restaurants are changing, right? And people have less money to spend when they go out to eat, and they have a lot more options now. And we realized that as we did some of our research. And what we wanted to do is create frequency for some of our current, like you said, our regulars. We understand you can't eat barbecue every day. I mean, I can, and that's kind of why I look the way I look. But that's me, big cuddly Matt. But that's why we went and southernized the menu, and we have country fried steak on the menu, country fried steak sandwiches. We did we did a really nice product working with one of our suppliers. We did a pickle and buttermilk brined chicken that's breaded, quickly deep fried, put that with a little comeback sauce on a brioche bun. But although these are new items, they are able to be cooked relatively quickly, 2 to 3 minutes cook time, so we can keep that speed up. But again, if you have a group of 4 people, hey, let's all go get barbecue, and you got one person saying, oh, well, you know what? I just had barbecue this week. How many times do they go somewhere else? So you went somewhere else. Now we have these wonderful options of a country fried steak or fried chicken. We got salads on the menu. We have chili on the menu. We have some other options to allow our guests to come in and be able to partake in other things besides barbecue.
Well, it makes sense that, as you said, barbecue is not an everyday meal. And I mean, a number of national barbecue chains have struggled with that, because as you roll out and expand, you need people to come to your restaurants regularly.
That's so true.
You can't just be a special occasion thing. I mean, depending on your economic model, like I remember hearing that a heavy user of Cinnabon goes like a couple of times a year.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Sure.
But you get enough people coming in to get your low fructose cinnamon rolls, and you're doing okay.
That's exactly right.
Barbecue, more of a struggle. So,
well, and you brought up something there. If I could just jump in, you brought food costs too. I mean, barbecue is not cheap. It is not cheap, and it is very difficult for restaurants to be a barbecue restaurant because so many people look at barbecue and say, I cook in my backyard. I'm a pit master. Look, I'm great. I have one of those big fancy eggs. I know what I'm doing. I must be great, right? And then they come in and say, well, what do you mean $12 for a rack of ribs? I can get it here. They don't understand that you got to buy the wood, right? And the guy's working back there for 12 hours cooking that. You're rubbing it down, and you got all that passion and love that's involved there. And unfortunately, that has to get transferred over to cost. And that was, again, one of the reasons why we expanded our menu is one of the core items is value. Value was something we made sure we built into every one of these new items because, a brisket sandwich and brisket prices have been all over the place this year. I mean, commodity prices have been nuts. Chicken, who are we talking about, right? I mean, that's crazy. So to be able to get something that we're able to stabilize and put in a more value price combo meal, if you will, that still fits our market has been a huge success for us. And again, that's something that was really big on us building this menu was not only keeping it southernization, keeping it quick and easy for operations, but we wanted value to be important to our guests.
Which, I mean, it certainly is. And, if it's a value item, obviously, I assume you still price them to be profitable. So that's...
well, that's absolutely. We certainly have, again, we're big enough that we have the ability to work very well with our suppliers to get the best possible pricing, but we're not so big that it's impossible to get that product everywhere, which is one of the reasons I really like working in this role because we're right in that little sweet spot. We're big enough to have some influence in pricing, but if I want to pull the trigger on something, I can make it happen everywhere because we're not asking for 1 million pounds of that or 2 million pounds of that. So it's a little bit easier. But yeah, so everything obviously is costed. We want to make sure our franchisees make money. That's the important thing that we always do, or you don't have franchisees. So we want everybody to make money. But again, comparatively to a whole giant brisket that's shrinking and you got to worry about all the work and cook time behind that, to some country fried steak that has no waste and you can simply make it, that's fantastic and juicy. But again, something that can be made quicker. We're able to provide something at a lower cost, but still be right where we want to be for a flavor and a brand.
When you also have moved your brisket chili to the core menu, right?
We did.
And that has to also help with cost because that's trim, right?
Yeah, it is. It's trim, and what's really great about the brisket chili is, a lot of people eat it by itself. But again, there's another switch for Matt moving from Chicago to Dallas. Oh, chili! That everyone loves it up in Chicago. Down here, chili not at 150 degrees. But putting it on top of our hand cut fries. I mean, we make our fries in the place and in the store every single day. Blanch them, fry them, super crisp. You top it with that big chunks of brisket that was literally just in the smoker hours ago. And it does. It fit. That used to be trim. That used to be something that might have just made its way to the waste pail. But now we're able to make sure that everybody's really enjoying it, lots of flavor, and it's on there every single day.
Well, now that I look more at my notes from having interviewed your boss, CEO Laura Dickey, a while ago,
yes,
it kind of has Matt Burton written all over it. Did you guys have hot dogs on the menu too, which is Chicago?
It had there. See, that is kind of funny. So it's not a hot dog. I will have to correct you with that, Brett.
Okay.
But it is called a Dickey dog, and you're right. That does have Matt Burton written all over that. I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, so maybe this gets edited. But I'm just going to be honest with you. We've known each other long enough. But we used to do the sausage sandwiches here. They'd slice it really thin and put it on a round brioche bun, and then we put sauce on it and send it out. And I got to admit, even during my interview, I walked in, I go, what is that? I mean, I'm the guy that grew down the street from Portillo's, right? So I mean, I'm that guy. I want my Chicago, drag it through the garden, do my thing, right?
Right.
Maxwell Street Polish. That's what we grew up as. And I'm like, what did you do to that beautiful sausage? I mean, we make the sausage for Dickey's at our own plant. These are great products. I mean, stuffed with jalapenos and cheese, and it's great authentic Polish recipe. And you're putting it on a round bun. It was freaking me out, man. It was keeping me up at night. So when we went to change this thing, I was like, I have an idea. Let me go way outside the box and let's put a Polish sausage on a garlic roll and put mustard and grilled onions on it. And everybody thought I was amazing down here. Up in Chicago, that's the guy at a street corner. I mean, everybody's doing it. But yeah, you're right. We did that. Mr. Roland Dickey, the other CEO and owner here, he loved it. He's like, this is great. We slice it down the middle. And it looks fantastic. Melted cheese on top. And then back to what you said earlier, the chili, you put that on top as an add-on. We can top it with more cheese sauce. We top it with coleslaw. We can literally, like I said, drag it through the garden, baby. Let's put whatever you want, pickles, onions. Let's load that thing up. But I hopefully, I don't know where my career goes. I would hope to be here for a long time, but I'm going to keep my finger on the pulse because this does have Matt Burton written all over it. And I appreciate you saying that, Brett.
I'm here for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Who doesn't like a hot dog? And,
I agree, right? And walking around, eating it, if people see it, hey, that looks good. Give me one of those. Portability is still a big deal nowadays. We do a ton of stuff to go. The DoorDashes, the Uber Eats, we deliver. I mean, all of that stuff is still very important. And that kind of fits that same category.
Well, it makes sense to introduce different regional stuff that, it's funny, wherever we live, we kind of think what we eat is universal and everybody likes it. But even within the United States, which is a relatively young country, there are so many different regional differences. I mean, how people eat their beans. Are they supposed to be chopped or not? And obviously, when you're in Texas, you cannot put beans in chili, but elsewhere you can.
Oh, Brett, you are preaching to the choir here. We do have a thing called local favorites that we allow our franchisees to they send me, hey, I'd like to put this on my menu. Is this allowed? Do we have a recipe? Can we do it? And some of them vary, just like you said. It's beans versus no beans, whatever. It's, hey, can I put tater tots on because the guy down the street? Okay. But some of there are some areas of the country that you have to have beef ribs. Beef ribs is something that people expect as part of barbecue, right? We had to create a Carolina sauce for certain restaurants because that's just it has to be a national chain that's barbecue. You better realize that barbecue isn't national. So, and you better be able to adapt. So we have that. And now that we're in 5 countries, I mean, we serve rice in Japan on our menu. We have poutine up in Edmonton. So we have to adapt and understand those local favorites. Now, next year when we're talking again, Brett, or maybe we see each other, I'll tell you about the new Italian beef I want to get put on this menu. We got to figure that out. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I'm just kidding with there. But we'll see if I can make it happen. A smoked Italian beef doesn't sound terrible.
No, and you never quite know how the trends will move. I was just thinking as you were talking about, I don't know, 15 years ago, you could not sell fried pickles in California, but you absolutely had to have them on the menu in Texas. Now you can sell fried pickles in California, no problem. Yep. People are into them. So
that's true. Well, look at tacos too, right? I mean, it's certain tacos, it's ground beef. That's it. That's all you eat. And then California came out of nowhere with the food trucks, and now you can put anything you want on a tortilla and call it a taco. I mean, it really is crazy.
It really is. That's true.
Pretty much. I think you can. I think I've seen them at NRN events and things. I always see the crazy tacos, so it's always fun to do that.
It's true. So you've been at Dickey's for about a year. Was the menu innovation already underway when you got there? Because these things obviously take a while.
No, great question. It was not. When I came aboard, the menu was the menu. This is the way it won. In fact, they had just optimized the menu and kind of reduced down some of the menu to kind of make it a little bit easier operationally, a little less waste, try to be some cost focused. But this year has been quite the year of change for us and some of the other operators down here that I've talked to at other chains that we had to adapt. We had to pivot when it came to the value. We had to pivot to getting our frequency in because just the economy as it is, I mean, just going to the grocery store, it costs so much more right now, and people just don't have the money. So we're all competing for that same pot, that same wallet that's out there, if you will. So that was we were looking at sales and what can we do? And so this came about, and it took I would say it was about 6 months, which, as you know, to get 15 new menu items on was pretty remarkable. And that yesterday was the first time it was available all nationally. We did roll it out in 2 sections of the country, based on our partnership with U.S. Foods to make sure the products were in the right houses and DCs. But the fact I had time to sit here and talk to you is a good thing because I'm not running around putting out fires. So that's something's going right. But yeah, so it moved along pretty quickly. But at the end of the day, I mentioned we had 15 items. But we only brought in 3 new SKUs. It was a matter of really sitting down, looking, what do we currently have? What can I use that's already there? What can we mix it? We brought in the country fried steak, we brought in the chicken, and we brought in some country gravy. Those are really the only things that, and all of them are shelf stable or something that is not going to be frozen, right? So we were really careful on how much stuff we had to bring in because then again, that really slows down starting the new items as well. So yeah, 15 items, only 3 new SKUs. I think we did a pretty darn good job. And we were able to, just train it. We put it out there. And I mean, I'll tell you, the one that we put out there that I thought was going to be a big win, particularly down here right now, is the Texas Fair, which is just enormous down here. The smoked turkey leg. We figured that would be really fun. We did a really cool way of wrapping it. We did a whole bunch of marketing, really good. And it just, we could not get it to operationally work in our place. So we had to put it aside and move on to some other things. So, yeah, but 6 months, it's been a busy 6 months, but we've been 6 months.
Yeah, good job, because it can take a long time to get this stuff pulled out. Although, post-pandemic, restaurant chains, I think, for the most part, started to move a lot faster when it comes to developing new items.
I think they kind of have to. And you know what? I think, I feel that there has been a change in the way some of these big suppliers do business, the Sysco's, the U.S. Foods, they're much more amenable to having conversations, and they're faster in working with us. And when we ask for samples and we work, the suppliers are so much faster than just a few years ago. I mean, I guess they need to get their sales numbers up too, I suppose. It probably is all reciprocal. But that makes a huge, huge difference. I could pick up the phone and say, hey, I need to test a couple of gravies, or I flew out and spent 2 days at Dot Foods and tasted hundreds of different items that we just spent in the kitchen just doing what we needed to do, and got so much work done. And it's because they were accommodating to us. Same thing with US Foods. I was in there they had 3 chefs in there, and we were just knocking it out. Wasn't very, back in the day, it wasn't necessarily that easy unless you were huge guys, and then you had those resources. But now they have those resources for us.
Well, and it seems like trends kind of happen faster, and so you have to jump on them faster.
Yeah, that's true.
Although Dickies isn't, I don't think the goal is for you guys to be, cutting edge. Obviously, you want to be relevant, but you're not out there. Yeah, nobody is expecting a Vietnamese barbecue or anything like that, or even Korean, which is moving relatively.
Which isn't that we that was something that was tested. We played around with the Korean style ribs and some of that stuff. But you're right. But again, going back to the very beginning, what is our core, right? And we've been doing this since the 1940s. It's Texas pit barbecue. And if it doesn't really fit that world and you can't explain to it around that, and it doesn't make sense to the story. I mean, Mr. Dickey and Mrs. Dickey are still walking around here. They come in here every once in a while and just check in and say hi. They're the nicest couple. All of our new franchisees meet Mr. Dickey, and he sits down and tells the story of the fire in the first restaurant and the fist fight that they had over the recipe of the sauce. And, he spins the yarn, the old Texas guy. So he does a great job of getting everybody excited. And so the history and the family traditions are definitely part of this. And if you'll let me, one of the things that I find really exciting and fun and that I like to share about this new menu is we're talking about fried chicken and we're talking about country fried steak. Is it revolutionary? No. Is everybody, we've seen that. But, in a barbecue place, it's a little different. The really unique thing that not most people know is the very first Dickies, the very first one that we still have open, just literally I could see out the window down here. When they started doing sandwiches, they were having trouble keeping up with sales. The guys weren't coming and buying the beers. They weren't doing the stuff. So what did they do? Every Friday was Country Fried Steak Friday. And Mrs. Dickey would come in and fry a country fried steak, and they'd make it till it was sold out. And then on Saturday, it was fried chicken Saturday. And people would line up out the door to get their fried chicken until it was sold out. And so how we've come full circle back to these things that were in the original Dickies, it's pretty exciting and cool to really think about that here's some guy from Chicago rolling into Dallas and somehow tripped myself into the same family tradition. And, it's exciting. It's cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to be able to link those together.
So I know you guys just, as you said, right now have made them available system-wide and have them in some smaller markets. Mm-hmm. Are there particular items that are standing out in terms of performance? I will
proudly say Dicky Dog is kicking butt, Brett.
All
Dicky
right.
Dog, we got to love. That is probably our number one. And I'm not just saying that, but it has been one of our biggest sellers. The other really big one is it's the crispy chicken sandwich that we put about a quarter pound of brisket on top of it, and then we put some barbecue sauce on it, so it's kind of that combo deal. That's also another big one. So I'll tell you the other thing we're selling a ton out of. This is crazy. This country gravy. It's country gravy. Everyone's had country gravy for a million years. They want this stuff on everything. Put it on my chicken sandwich. Put it on my fries. Put it on my potatoes. Put it on this. Put it on that. But hey, go to town, baby. Let's rock and roll. It's gravy. But that was another shocker. We put it there just for the sandwich. They love their country gravy down here, man. They put it on everything. So we are super excited about how successful those have been.
That is an interesting takeaway for all of our audience, because there aren't really, yes, country gravy is very normal in about, a third to half of the country. Mm-hmm. But it's not as common at chains. And I'm sure Cracker Barrel has it. When I waited tables at a big boy restaurant in the 80s, we had country gravy, we had country fried steak and country gravy. But, imagine it showing up at some of the quick service sandwich chains and stuff. Maybe there's a potential.
I mean, it holds well. It goes on all different types of proteins, dark meat, white meat, fried food, non-fried food. It just made sense the more we started putting it out there and made it available. When we started taking some really good food photography and started doing that and putting it up on our digital menu boards, people were really saying, "Oh, you got the white gravy, you got the country gravy, you got pepper gravy." I mean, everyone's got their own name for it. That became that's a whole story by itself around here, how to name it. But yeah, it is become quite the thing. And I'm not kidding. I was at one of our stores Monday, and we were doing some photos, last minute photo touch-ups and stuff. And we had a DoorDash order, 13 orders of country gravy. That's all the DoorDash was. 13 side orders of country gravy. And I'm like, what is up with this? And somebody came and picked up 13 side orders of country gravy and a big yellow cup of iced tea. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing with that gravy, but have a good time, man. That's fantastic. Good time.
They were just sitting in their bathtub and eating country gravy.
The stories we could talk about, but not on the podcast. Not on the podcast, Brett.
But it does remind me of a story I forgot about. When I was in culinary school in Paris, we made something with bacon. It was a bacon dish, or excuse me, a liver dish with bacon. And one of my classmates was a Houstonian, and she's like, "Well, if we're having bacon grease, I'm making country gravy." And she did. In this, French culinary school, and
boy,
got all the pepper, tons of pepper, and made a roux with the bacon grease and everything, and it was great. And she made biscuits. Why not? The dishwasher, but the French dishwasher wouldn't touch it. He was like, "No, that's not very refined. I'm not."
Oh my God! When the dishwasher says it's not refined enough, oh, what are we doing? Us American cooks, oh my gosh, geez.
Well, he was a Parisian dishwasher. So.
Oh, well, good for him. I'm sure he went home and had a baguette and everything was wonderful. That's a little butter.
He ate his French food, not his nasty American food.
That nasty bacon and biscuits. Who wants that stuff? Oh,
I love that stuff.
I bet you he was thin, though.
No.
No? Oh,
No.
Okay. All right.
He had some weight to him.
We like fluffy guys. We're all about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Fluffy guys. Exactly.
So the menu's rolled out. What are you doing now?
Well, right now we're taking a breath. We're waiting and getting a lot of feedback. We've created multiple emails to go to our specific stores. We're getting feedback literally hourly. We're not perfect. Honestly, the first person to say it, we're not. You know what? No matter how many times you're going to test something, I guarantee you we forgot something. But we're prepared to pivot and make changes as needed. Again, knock on wood, we haven't gotten anything yet today, but that's kind of our next week or so of just kind of sit and wait. And then we're also preparing for our busiest time of year, which is the holidays. Our amount of catering that we do, smoked turkeys. We're doing an amazing injected Cajun deep fried turkey this year that we've already got so many pre-sales on. It's insane. It is the line around the block on Thanksgiving morning over at the original Dickies to pick up their smoked turkey and all their sides and fixing. And you got your Christmas music playing. And last year I had my turkey hat on because, why not? But that's really our next big thing. We're really ready to get that. The menus are hitting the website, I think, next week. We've already started taking pre-orders. And before you know it, it's Thanksgiving and then into Christmas, and we are working constantly. So we're excited about that because, like I said, it's been ups and downs, but holiday season's always our big time. We've simplified the menu to keep it easy operationally for us. We want our guests to be able to pick up the turkeys either hot or they want to finish them at home in a cooking bag that we've already cooked. They can just simply reheat it. But we understand that, holidays are all about family. Dickie's all about family, and we try to keep those traditions together. We try to keep it very fun, and we just try to stay sane for the next couple of months, Brett. So I don't know if you're free around Thanksgiving. You're welcome to come down and help us out. We could always use a couple pair of hands. A French trained chef like yourself, we could definitely use some help on the turkey side.
I certainly appreciate the invitation, Matt, but I don't travel during Thanksgiving. That's a crazy.
That's also smart. Yeah, you're a smart man. That's why
stay here in New York City. And I also have a post-Thanksgiving tradition. That is, it's so old we don't call it Black Friday. We call it the day after Thanksgiving because we've been doing it that way.
That is old. That is old.
But old college friends of mine and I, we start in Chinatown and just eat and drink our way through the city until we.
That sounds like fun with you and the millions of tourists that are there for the parade.
But it's the day after, so there aren't that many people, and restaurants are relatively quiet. I guess everyone's busy shopping. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, or they got the leftovers back home doing their little turkey sandwiches or whatever.
All of that.
That sounds like. How about I come up and go dine with you? I'm going to tell them that I have to do that, so I don't have to. I'll tell Laura.
You're certainly welcome, but that's between you and your bosses.
Oh, see, now that's on tape. Now it's going to be very difficult for me to get up there now.
Yeah. Well, this isn't going to air for a couple of weeks. Maybe you can finagle it.
All right, I'll see what I can do.
At any rate, thank you a lot for the time. It was great catching up.
Sure
and let's do it more often.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always here. Dickie's is super excited. Thanks for having us on and talking about what we're doing here. And yeah, let's not be strangers, my friend. Let's see each other before the menu masters here. So.
Yeah, that's not till May.
I know. We got to get together and have Chinese, I guess. So.
Sure. Come on.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. You be safe.
Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft the full line of exceptional cheeses guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.